Well, good morning, everyone. So good to see you all. I'm going to open this up right now, and I just want to let you know that I've got the sacred smudge going, and I'm virtually smudging each and every one of you before we start in a good way. So, welcome to the Indigenous Child and Family Services Directors Our Children Our Way Society. My name's Michelle Morningstar Doherty. I am the Communications Coordinator. I'm also a proud member of Cowessess First Nation in Saskatchewan. I'm calling in today from the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation in West Vancouver. I would very much like to introduce our brand new Executive Director, Joni Conlon. Joni.
Binhansu, everybody. Sai Joni Conlon Satne. My name is Joni Conlon. I'm the brand new executive director of Our Children Our Way. I get to say that for a little while longer. It's so nice to see everybody. My meeting finished early, so I'm so excited to join you in this discussion and to learn together. I'm from the Seke Dene Nation, and I'm calling in from the unceded traditional territory of the Lheidli T'enneh people, which is also known as Prince George. And previous to that, I raised my children on the unceded traditional territory of the Wet'suwet'en and Nadoten peoples. It's so nice to see everybody, and welcome everyone. Awitse, Masai.
Thank you so much, Joni. I'm so glad that you could join us today, being the incredibly busy person that you are. Just a little bit about us. We're the Our Children Our Way Secretariat. We support 24 Indigenous Child and Family Services agencies in what is known today as British Columbia. The Secretariat team supports the agencies that we work with, and each of those agencies has been mandated by their chiefs. And we help to ensure together that the best interests of Indigenous children are being met. We advocate for systemic changes to policy, practice, legislation, and funding. And we address issues that have a province-wide impact with the view to providing a collective First Nations voice. I would like to introduce our dear, revered knowledge keeper and advisor, Judy Wilson. Judy?
Waikakoitep request Judy Wilson. My traditional name's Red Hummingbird. I'm from the unceded territories of the Secwepemc, and I'm really happy to join the circle today, Michelle and Joni, for the work that's going to be taking place here, and for all of those that joined us. I'm going to do, I was working on this prayer song for Mother Earth, but these are all the what I came up with so far. It's just the words right now, so I'll put them into a prayer, and then we'll open up our circle here. Cook's Jam, Kilcook Be Creator, Great Spirit, we thank you. We thank you for the reminders, Creator, and the teachings that Mother Earth, we're all your children. We come into this life and water, and we're born into this world. And no matter who we are, we all depend on your love, Creator, your kindness and systems to provide us with the wind that cools our lands and waters from all corners and all directions, and for the rain that comes in the sacred water cycle that cleanses us and fills our water ways to bring it to the oceans and back to the clouds and the mountain caps, and for the lightning that heats our homes and gives us energy. And we pray for Mother Earth's cleansing and purification, and for the teachings of our ancestors and our grandmothers and our grandfathers to live in balance and harmony with everything around us, embracing our original ways of being, and to walk gently on Mother Earth and others as the original instructions given to us. Mother Earth, please hear our prayers and songs, and we ask Creator to send our calls from the universe to all corners of the earthly realm. Let the original teachings and voices of our ancestors guide us and carry across our territories. And from the east, where we begin our existence, and not to forget where we come from, and our curiosity and our learning and our teachings of spirit that Creator gifted each one of us. And from the south, in our awakening as youth to seek out our teachers, ask questions, learn about the fire and the passions that guide us and nurture us on our journey. Into the West, we look to the hemisphere to learn acceptance and responsibility from our grandfathers for raising our children and families, for giving a foundation to the next generation. And from the North, to be gently nurturing of the wisdom and the knowledge and sharing it, and learn to walk in balance and harmony with our Mother Earth. And also to hear us, your children, and to hold our hands together collectively as we walk on this path in this world, and to guide us, to give us the lessons we seek, to bring us closer to you, Creator, and also to return to the Western direction and once again to enter the world of spirit when that time comes for where the sacred fire awaits, and we rejoin our ancestors and our elders in the presence of all who created us. We thank you, Creator, for this cycle of life, and we thank you for this time together in this circle so that we can learn and share with one another, so we can uplift each other, especially for our children who are at the center and also in our hearts. So we pray for those medicine bundles, and we pray for those collectively to come together to share what they can. And we thank you for our Mother Earth and our water and all of creation, Creator. And we pray for the underserved, the underrepresented, and the underhoused, that they will also be able to connect with you and have the resources and support, and also that they will find the love and the acceptance in these circles, and also that they will come to be having that quality of life that all ought to have, especially our children. Cook's Jam, Cook's Jam, Cook's Jam, Cook's Jam. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you to everyone in the circle.
Thank you so much, Judy. Red Hummingbird Woman, that was just a beautiful way to open. I even don't want to say anything because it was so good. But anyway, I'd better get moving on this. Just to let you know that I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Registered participants in this webinar will be added to the Our Children national distribution list. We actually have two lists. One is a BC specific list. And if you are from BC and you'd like to join that list, please let me know. Just send me an email, secretariat@ourchildrenairway.ca. And we'll let you know the latest news releases, updates on future webinars, and the Loving Justice Conference in Saskatchewan, and the Our Children Our Way Conference here in BC. It's very easy to unsubscribe to either list, so I just wanted to let you know. Also, this webinar is being recorded, and the presentation that will soon be made and the recordings will be available on both our website and our YouTube channel. So I do hope you'll watch that. Hopefully I'll get this edited and up today. Otherwise, please have a look over the weekend. I would now like to introduce our amazing guests, Jacqlyn Padavell of ALIGN Community Services of Alberta. Please give us a wave, Jacqlyn. Yay! And Cheryl Whiskeyjack of Bent Arrow Traditional Healing Society. They'll be presenting the Parallel Process Leadership and Practices Ceremony webinar. As a little bit of a background, the ALIGN Well-Being Toolkit is a resource that supports Indigenous and non-Indigenous organizations in measuring well-being and the impact of services through an Indigenous worldview. It is principle-based, culturally rooted framework and a practice orientation that is reflective of diverse ways of being and knowing, and grounded in Indigenous perspectives as parallel approaches to validating practice. Bent Arrow Traditional Healing Society's practice as ceremony is a model of service delivery that sets as exemplar of the notion of parallel process. uses old ways of knowing to help facilitate, encourage, and create space for our families and people who work with our families to have that sacred relationship that is based on love, trust, and reciprocity. The practice model uses story to help people see themselves in a parallel process using an analogy of the sun dance and all its elements to understand the role we all play in ceremony of our relationship with families and children that we are serving. Through the telling of story and an understanding of current roles, we place ourselves in the context of those sacred roles and relationships we find in ceremony. I would love to introduce now Jacqlyn Padavell. Jacqlyn, would you like to take it away?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Michelle, for your introduction. And Judy, thank you for opening in such a beautiful way and helping to remind me of my purpose and why we're here today. As Michelle stated, my name is Jacqlyn Padavell. I'm with ALIGN Agency of Community Services, and I'm the well-being consultant responsible for supporting agencies in the implementation of the well-being toolkit. I have a small presentation that I'm going to share. And then I'm actually going to set a timer because in all likelihood, I won't get to all of my slides. And like Michelle said, those will be distributed and accessible following our presentation. I'm going to talk, I think, probably for about 20 minutes, and then I'm going to hand over the platform, quite literally and figuratively, to Cheryl to share the story of Bentero's service delivery model, practices ceremony. Now, Tracy or Kai, I think one of you will be sharing my presentation. Excellent. So, yeah, overview of the Wellbeing Toolkit, Bantero practices ceremony, followed by opportunity for question and discussion. Thank you. This is perfect. So one of the things about the Wellbeing Toolkit is that it's really important to understand that it is an opportunity to sharing. Oh, go back to you were on the right one. Slide number 2. Perfect, thank you. It's the opportunity for, I need to move there we go. The ALIGN Well-Being Toolkit is it's an opportunity for agencies and the sector to report at 2 different levels in terms of the impact of service delivery across domains of well-being. On the one hand, it supports agencies and organizations to track, assess, and measure the impact of their service delivery on children and families. Kai, do I need to be paying attention to the chat, or can I just
Not
ignore
at
those when
all.
they pop
I've
up?
got the chat covered. You're good to go, Jacqlyn.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. And then alternatively, or in addition to, at a higher level, the Wellbeing Toolkit and the tools that are embedded within it enable ALIGN as a community organization or a provincial community or community of agencies to share at a very high level across the sector the impact that agencies have in terms of the delivery of their services and the efficacy of their programs. Okay, so if you could move to the next one. So the Wellbeing Toolkit in it is, some people have spoken of it in terms of a bundle, and it is not simply a linear logic model that if then you will achieve this outcome, but it's the culmination of 3 years of work between PolicyWise, agent for family and children and families, and ALIGN and a number of members within the ALIGN community, as well as elders and knowledge keepers. The components of the Wellbeing Toolkit are multiple. and have a lot of characteristics, depth, and um, uh, um, it's a complex model that people sort of get a little bit overwhelmed when they look at it, and but once you start thinking about it and looking at it in light of the services that you're providing, lots of times you'll see elements of things that are already being done. Again, it's not exactly a logic model, but a comprehensive, iterative engagement of youth with lived experience, elders, knowledge keepers, service delivery agency, and staff. It has 4 quadrants that make up the whole. The first of which, on the top left-hand corner, is the model and definition of well-being that includes 7 domains of well-being with 4 grounding principles. And while it's not, it's not unheard of to have seven domains of well-being in terms of a well-being framework. One of the things that make it separate it from others out there is the involvement in Alberta youth with lived experience, practitioners, and Indigenous elders and knowledge keepers. And that's one of the things that I keep going back to, is that it was a very iterative, engaging process and co-developed with the voice of people that have lived experience and knowledge keepers and elders. The next significant element of the Wellbeing Toolkit are the principles for measuring child and youth well-being. These principles center on Indigenous perspectives on supporting well-being and enables diversity and respect for parallel process and ethical space. The third significant element of the Wellbeing Toolkit is a menu of indicators that have been created to assess child, youth, and caregiver outcomes, as well as agency effort. The outcomes are culturally responsive and have been viewed through the lens of the principles that I talked about earlier, that I will describe a little bit later in the presentation. The menu of indicators is fairly significant and is representative of the 19 different tools for assessment and evaluation that are used across the spectrum of service delivery providers in Alberta, and very likely are used nationally. The fourth component of the development process for agencies is to be able to share outcomes and impact, and for ALIGN to aggregate the data that shows a provincial story of impact. When we talk about parallel process and integration of the Wellbeing Toolkit into agencies to support their evaluation of service delivery, this is one of the elements that we that service providing agencies are looking to integrate into their organization, and that's storytelling. And how is it that you can gather from children, youth, and families the story of their experience while receiving services from your agency that supports how you're doing in terms of delivering the services as it relates to the domains of well-being. You could move forward. Next slide, please. So this slide is simply an iteration of the journey that ALIGN policy-wise and the agencies that were involved in the development. This is a bit of a visual description of the process and the journey. And one of the things that you'll notice throughout the Wellbeing Toolkit is the metaphor of nature, of travel, of journey, and growth. So again, reiterating that children, youth, caregivers, service providers, and elders were very deeply involved in the development of the model of the wellbeing framework, and then subsequently the toolkit. There was a great deal of research, and everything was done in ceremony and with protocol. Next slide, please. So slide is a representation of the 7 domains of well-being. And I think some of the things that are really imperative in terms of the domains of well-being, in addition to their definitions and examples of practice that are embedded in some of our documents, is that it's rooted in the perspective that well-being is ecological and relational. It's interconnected, requires equitable access and structures, and it's important for it to be strength-based and trauma-informed. And I think the other thing that's really important when we're talking about the domains of well-being and the well-being toolkit is a reminder that well-being is not simply the absence of risk, and which is the single side of the coin. Next slide, please. One of the things that I talked to previously around the elements within the bundle, the toolkit or the well-being bundle, is the principles that were used to select the criteria and indicators for well-being. And a reminder that principles don't really tell us what to do, but how to do it. And so how is it that when we're looking at indicators and assessment, how is it that we need to be viewing, and what is it that we're looking for in terms of hopes for achievement? Some of the things that I think from my perspective, and people will be looking at it differently, of course, is the commitment to decolonizing practice, leading with curiosity, and being strength-based, as well as one of the things that our service sector talked about is the importance of staff capacity and well-being. Before the implementation of the Wellbeing Toolkit, one of the things that we did was a pilot project to have agencies work with the Wellbeing Toolkit and implement or use in whatever way fits within their organization. And of the 6 that piloted the Wellbeing Toolkit, 2 of them focused on integrating staff capacity and well-being into their supervision process. And we got really great feedback from that, and other agencies are adopting that approach in terms of trying to support staff to enable them to better to support children and children, youth, and families. Next slide, please. So this slide is simply an example of one of the tools within the Wellbeing Framework, in the Wellbeing Toolkit, and it's a document that lists each one of the domains of well-being with then practical with. Okay, I have to confess, Tracy, that I have lost track of my slides because I'm not the one doing them. But so this is an example of our menu of indicators, and one of the ways that you can view and assess. So at the top of the page, what you see there is the domain of well-being. You identified within the domain of well-being are well-being domain goals. And then below that is a chart that provides the goal statement, and then the menu of indicators based on the whether it's children and youth that are being assessed in terms of their response to your program and in relation to caregivers or agency. There's also evaluative criteria for caregivers in terms of their ability to deliver services, and then the organizational output. How are their programs in terms of where are their programs in terms of efficacy in achieving the outcomes or the goal as it relates to this particular domain of well-being is connection to land. Cheryl, I'm just checking my time.
I'm just going to interrupt a little bit, Jacqlyn, and I'll just quickly change the screen view so that you can see the slides on the bottom as well as the one presenting. Would that be? Yeah, okay.
Perfect, thank you. Go to the next slide. Oh, no, the one, yes, that one. So again, in terms of trying to make the Wellbeing Toolkit easily used and provide people with the ability to, one of the significant things that I find beneficial with regards to the Wellbeing Toolkit and all the domains is the different activities and work that went into trying to make the each one of the tools or the bits that are in the bundle accessible and usable by different agencies depending on how it is that they choose to use it. What this particular screen is sharing with you is an example of while the previous one showed you a list that is printable and you can read it and go through it in as a PDF. This one is a downloadable a downloadable list of all of the indicators and assessments, and it's coded by domain. And in addition to the fact that you can export each one of the indicators related to domains, you can also, at a glance, you can see what particular domain of well-being the assessment tool that you might currently be using captures. Through the work that I've done with the agencies that are working with the domains of well-being. Yeah, go ahead. You can open the whole thing so people can see it.
This is so interesting, Jacqlyn. I just want to say thank you. Great.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure, of course. So this slide represents a exportable data file that can be sorted, and it also represents, like I said, the particular domain that a tool, assessment tool that you might currently be using covers. One of the things that most significantly the agencies that I've been working with have identified gaps in is connection to culture and cultural relationships. And so the way that they're using the tool is to look very specifically at what the gaps are in their current assessment of their service delivery, and then integrating these indicators into things that they currently use. Some of them, it might be an exit survey. Others, it's integrating it into questions that will tease out stories based on children and youth's experience with their organization. Next slide, please. Again, this is just what we're sharing here is a bit of an example of our journey and different ways that we have of sharing impact and stories related to the impact of service delivery. And there's a couple of different levels. And again, Cheryl, I'm hoping that as a part of your presentation, you'll talk about wayfinding with lobsticks and the importance of markers and sharing caches of resources and providing information. So that's at the agency level. And then more broadly, our intention at ALIGN is to bring together a group of agencies and representative members of ALIGN to be led by an elder with the right privileges and knowledge to be able to lead a winter count, an annual process for sharing stories and providing information and capturing history. And so with that, I think my time is just about up. And again, we'll be sharing the Our Children Our Way will share the slides. And if you have any questions or want any kind of follow-up, I'm more than happy to connect with everybody in whatever way, independently or meeting with your agencies.
Jacqlyn,
Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for that. I'm just wondering if you would be so kind as to put your email address in the chat. I'm sure that many people would like to actually connect with you. So thank you so much for that. I hope you'll be staying around while we go to the wonderful Cheryl Whiskeyjack from Bent Arrow Traditional Healing Society. Over to you, Cheryl.
Hi. So my name is Cheryl Whiskeyjack, and I'm the executive director of the Bent Arrow Traditional Healing Society here in Edmonton, Alberta. I'm calling in from Treaty 6 territory, the ancestral home of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and the Métis homeland. I hail from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Anishinaabeg people on Manitoulin Island in Ontario, but I have made my home out here for many, many years. And I just want to also thank Judy for the prayer and also for the invitation to share a story with everybody here today. So I want to start at the very beginning. And when we get to the slide portion, I only have one slide. And so for whoever is controlling that, it's the beadwork on the back of a turtle. But I want to start at the very beginning, and the very beginning is the Bent Arrow creation story. It's a nonprofit here in Edmonton that was started by a couple named Brad and Shauna Seneca. Shauna is Scottish on both sides of her family, worked for the Alberta government in income support, and this would have been in the late 80s, early 90s. And Brad originally came from the London, Ontario area. Also, he is also Anishinaabe. Came to Alberta for the same reason my family came, which is the opportunities that Alberta has for folks. They met in the sector and very bravely decided to start up this brand new nonprofit that was originally going to serve Indigenous youth. That was the very first program. And the reason why they focused on the youth was because in Shauna's work with the Alberta government, her caseload was Indigenous youth. And as an income support worker, her job wasn't just to provide income supports to these young people, it was also to connect them to supportive resources in the community. And when, so this would have been late 80s, early 90s. And one of the things she shared with me was that in those days, there wasn't really anything in the city of Edmonton specifically geared towards Indigenous youth. There was like ABC life skills program, you know, sort of in the inner city. There was like a ABC parenting program offered in some part of the city, but everything was sort of generic and for everybody. And one of the things she learned from spending time with these young people was that they had very specific needs that were very specific to who they were as Indigenous people. And oftentimes, the ones that were struggling the most were missing that part of themselves. They had lost it through all of the things we know that happen to Indigenous people here in Canada. And that was the reason why they were struggling, right? That they were at risk. The story about Bent Arrow's creation, actually, Bent Arrow's name, pardon me, came from Brad, and a story that he shared with us in those earliest days. And it's the reason why they named the organization Bent Arrow, is a story that goes way back, way back, way back. To when he was a young boy on the land with his grandfather. And then the story goes even way further back to the stories that this grandfather had to share with Brad. And it was a story about how a long time ago, everything we did in our lives, in our day-to-day lives, was a ceremony. You know, when you woke up in the morning and, you know, for the women, preparing a meal for your family before they headed off to do whatever it was that they were going to be doing that day, that meal was a ceremony. It wasn't just breakfast, right? And mom's job was to put the best of herself into that meal, because that meal was going to nourish your children, your partner. It was going to nourish and make them strong so that they can go out into the world and do whatever it was that they were going to be doing, which was for kids, it was learning. For their partner, it was to be going out there and building or providing or hunting, those kinds of things. And so
the way I always sort of tell the story here at Bentero and wherever I speak about this story is, you know, when you think about your own self and you think about my mom makes the best whatever, or my grandma makes the best whatever, it's because that's her ceremony, and you taste the love, you literally feel the love that they put into that meal so that you can benefit from that, right? Building your home was a ceremony. And if you didn't go into that ceremony with a good heart and a good mind, you know, your dwelling could take on water. It would protect you from the elements. A good stiff breeze could knock it over. So building your home was a ceremony, and it was really important to do that in a good way, and treat it as such. And hunting was a ceremony. And to this day, when our men go hunting, they still treat it as a ceremony. They make those offerings and ask, you know, for the ability to provide for their family and for their community, and through whatever it was that they were going to be hunting for on that day. Because having a successful hunt meant that people were going to eat, that you could get tools, that you could get garments from those things that you harvested off the land, those animals that you harvested. And then when they make a kill, offerings were made for that animal who gave up their life so that you could have those things that you need. So ceremony was also a part of the hunt. Building your weapons for the ceremony was also a ceremony. So when you were making those arrows, you wanted to make them as straight as you could, because if you have a bent arrow, it's not going to meet its mark, right? They need to be as straight as they can be. And so putting that good intention into the building of those arrows meant that there was a higher likelihood of you having a successful hunt, which is the outcome, you know, for the purposes of our discussion here today. And with those initial youth that they were looking to provide services for, they saw them as bent arrows, these youth, these Indigenous youth, that someone didn't put that love and good energy into the raising of them. And this is why they were straying off their path and not meeting those targets that we want our young people to meet. And so from the very earliest days of Bentero, we were talking about practice as ceremony without having that framework to be able to share it with everybody. We just knew that the way we served our young people had to incorporate those elements for it to be received and for it to have meaning for the folks that we were serving. So, you know, we grew from those young people. We grew very intentionally because those young people, we learned very quickly, weren't islands. They had people around them that were also struggling. Maybe dad was struggling with keeping a job or getting a job, which put their housing in precariousness. And so, which meant that food was also a concern for folks, and having that ability to feed your family, and because you didn't have a job, possibly impacting your ability to have a home for your children. So there was all these things that were going on for those youth, and we grew very mindfully with that in mind. The other thing that we learned with that lesson was that Bentero couldn't look at itself as if it was an island, that we are a part of a very intricate sort of system and ecosystem here, and it is best for us to think of us as a partner to all of those people in community that were also serving our folks that we were serving. We didn't want them to be getting all of this sort of good intention from 9 till 3, and then when we sent them back out into the community, that they weren't receiving having that same sort of feeling. And so we started to work very closely with folks like Alberta Children's Services, Edmonton Police Service, Edmonton Public Schools, all of these sort of big institutions that were serving our community, and really working side by side to help them do that in a good way. And so there was like learning and growing and doing that. So Children's Services was one of the big partners that we started a relationship with very early on. And we learned and grew together, and practice changed from the Alberta government side of things. And relationship became something that was very important to sort of grow and foster in the community. And there was several practice models along the way. But in 2008, they started working on a model that was called outcome-based service delivery. And this model was about the government, children's services, not purchasing a unit of service, a foster care bed, a group home bed, 60 hours of family support or counseling, whatever that service was. It was about working in partnership with community organizations like Bentero and many others here in Edmonton and in the province, and working alongside them in relationships so that we could serve this family together from a place of knowing, right? The service delivery model, OBSD, outcome-based service delivery, evolved into what we still call today CSD, which stands for collaborative service delivery. And because really what we were doing was working very collaboratively with our CFS partners in serving the families that we were connected to. And so enough learning had happened, enough sort of reputation was being built on Bentero's side of things that the province actually approached us when CSD was starting to roll out in the city and in the province in a bigger way. And they said to us, we want Bentero to be able to document how they do their work, because we would like other CSD sites in Alberta to be informed by how Bentero is doing their work. And so we partnered with Blue Quills University and the University of Calgary, and we started doing this sort of research with Indigenous research methodology, which is basically doing it in ceremony. We started with pipe and put our ask out into the universe, and it was about to be able to share this way of working with kids and families from the way that we have been doing it for many, many years, and putting those words so that other people could understand that. We did many interviews with many people, families that we were working with, youth we were serving, with service providers like foster parents and kinship providers, with our practitioners here on site, which we call them family wellness workers, with our partners in CFS. Those folks got interviewed. Everybody got interviewed. We transcribed those interviews, and we all got stacks of these transcripts on this advisory committee for this work. And we went through them and we started theming them out. One of the transcripts that I received was from a foster parent, and another one was from a practitioner that we had on site here. And we told them we wanted to do this work in ceremony. We wanted them to incorporate culture in serving this family and these young people that we were charged with serving. And the interview that I read from one of our practitioners here on site really made me sad, because what she had said in her was that my leaders want me to practice with and incorporate culture into my practice, and I don't really know what they want me to do, but I feel like whatever I am doing is like ramming culture down my family's throat. And those were the exact words that she had used, or they had used. I don't know if it was a she. And it really made me feel like, oh, we did not serve her well to go out and practice this in a good way. And from the foster parents' point of view, they were talking about how they really wanted to serve this Indigenous child in a good way, but really lacked the knowledge to be able to do that. And they were really sort of yearning for that. One of the people in the advisory circle, actually the research assistant at that time, was going to her very first Sundance ceremony. And she started talking about how, there's so many moving parts to this Sundance ceremony. I'm going to kind of speak to that ceremony as if nobody really knows what happens at a Sundance ceremony, but it's a very sacred ceremony in many of our communities here on Turtle Island. They have different names in different regions, but on the prairies here, they do call them Sundances. And they're a ceremony where over 4 days, if you're the Sundancer, you're sacrificing food, water, you're sacrificing basically all earthly comforts for a 4-day period to be in this ceremony. And you are putting yourself in this place of prayer over those 4 days. To add some hardship to that ceremony, it's done in June when the days are longest, It's you're dancing in place sort of from sunup to sundown, and there's some breaks in there. But you can imagine how difficult this ceremony would get over 4 days without, food, water, and, shelter, because sometimes it rains, sometimes it's blistering hot. It really just depends on what it's like when you go into that ceremony. In the center, so this is the drawing that you see on the slide here. We used to do it with stick men and triangular teepees and to describe this story. But in the center of this turtle's back is the arbor where the Sundance takes place, and those red dots represent the Sundancers. And the Sundancers could be anyone in this room here today. They're people who are committed to living their life in a certain way. They're committed to this ceremony. They're committed to praying for whatever it is that brought them to this ceremony, but for all those other people in the community, and the community is represented by all those teepees that are also on that turtle's back, that are coming to that ceremony also for help, for guidance, for strength, for direction, for healing. And so they are coming to benefit from those Sundancers that are in that ceremony. And the middle of the arbor, there's always this tree, and on this tree there's like a whole ceremony to get that tree in the arbor. But once they get that tree there, that tree is called the tree of life, and on that tree is like hundreds and hundreds of prayer flags that are on there. They're all different colors, and they have all different intentions and meanings behind them, and they are brought by those people that are attending those ceremonies that are in those teepees. Today they could be in fifth wheels or in trailers or tents, but just to make it look real traditional, we put teepees on this turtle's back. They are bringing their prayer flags for whatever it is that brought them to that ceremony. And those Sundancers are there literally praying for those people to get what it is they're asking for. So, for the sake of talking about, parallel practice, this story, we deliver this teaching over a half day to all of our staff here at Bentero as they come in, because this is the way we want them to think about the work. We talk about how your business card says something. It says you're a housing support worker, you're a family support worker, you're an employment counselor, you're a newcomer serving worker, or a navigator, whatever it says, that is what you're here to do. But you're also on the journey with the folks that you're serving. And on that tree of life where those flags are, those flags in our parallel practice would be like the service plans that you have with the person that you're serving in your program. Because those prayers represent your hopes and wishes, what you hope to see change in, and that's in our parallel practice what service plans serve that purpose. In that ceremony, you have community all around you, like I said, in those teepees. And in our parallel practice, you would have CFS at the table, you'll have psychologists at the table, you'll have maybe foster parents at that table, all of those people that are there to sort of be a part of that support system for that Sundancer. So in our model, the person that we're serving is the Sundancer. And what I find really beautiful about that is that, when you look at like our social work sort of models that are out there, it's based on like some kind of deficit. There's something wrong here, and we're here to try and fix it, right? And in our story of parallel practice, the Sundancers in our community are really sort of looked at, with honor, because they are sacrificing of themselves for the betterment of for themselves, someone in their community, someone in their family, etc. And all of those strangers that come to that ceremony who are also coming for their own reasons. They're praying for those people as well. So our Sundancers are really sort of looked to as like, they're honored because they're willing to sacrifice. And we look at our families that we're serving in children's services, for example, that mom that we're serving, that dad that we're serving as that Sundancer, who is willing to like change things, sacrifice things, do without things so that their children can grow and flourish. And the community is there to support that, that happening. In that ceremony, there is a person who has a role that's called a stick man. And the stick man's job is to keep that ceremony going good over the 4 days. So they take their direction from the elders and the pipe holders and the Sundance lodge holder. They take their direction from them, and they when it's time to take a break, they'll tell the Sundancers, okay, we're going to have a rest period. So, you know, sit down and rest yourself. And then when the rest period's over, the Sundancer, or pardon me, the stick man will go around that arbor and start tapping the ground in front of those Sundancers who are sitting on the ground and say, okay, the break is over. It's time to get up and dance again. And you can imagine after day 3, you're so depleted, you're psychologically depleted, your body is just so depleted from lack of water, lack of nourishment. Maybe the weather's been cold, maybe the weather's been blistering hot, but you're just really sort of spent and you sort of feel like giving up. But that the stickman's job is to keep that ceremony moving forward. So pretend Jacqlyn is a Sundancer, and I'll tap the ground in front of Jacqlyn and say, like, you know, come on, Jacqlyn, it's time to get up. And Jacqueline's like, no, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm just done. And you keep encouraging that Sundancer to get up and keep dancing. Come on, Jacqlyn, it's day 3. Tomorrow, this is over. You're done. You fulfilled that commitment that you made when you came here. And, you know, you're so close. Don't give up now, Jacqlyn. And so somewhere within Jacqlyn, she finds the wherewithal to get up and continue dancing for the rest of that day 3, because day 4 is the end of that ceremony. So in our parallel practice, the stick man would be like our practitioner, our family wellness worker, our CFS worker, our housing worker, our employment counselor, that will go to that person that we're serving and say, don't give up, keep dancing, keep moving forward. You're doing okay. I know it's hard, but you're almost there. And that's the role that our practitioners play. One of the things that's also important to tell about this story is that it isn't just a story for the people that we serve, like that the people that we serve are the Sundancers, because on another day, whatever's going on in your life, you could be that Sundancer. So the story really sort of fits whoever it needs to fit on the day that we're sharing that teaching. So some days you're the dancer and some days you're the stick man, right? So if things are really going on for you in your own world, we challenge people to look at this way of being as a way to get through that challenge. And so if you become all of a sudden the Sundancer because your kid's struggling, or you know your partnership with your spouse is struggling, or someone lost a job, whatever that life throws at you, we challenge you to look at your community, which is all of those teepees on the back of this turtle, who there can provide some support to you. And it's a real humbling place for a helper to admit that they need help. We probably all know this in the room that we're sharing here today. So we use this model to teach our practitioners how to look at the work and how to approach the work as if you're practicing in ceremony. So one of the ways that we use to do that, one of the ways that we teach people to think about the work in that way, is to incorporate elements of ceremony into their practice. So a very simple way to do that is to light up the smudge. When you're sitting with that mom, and you're there to have a very sensitive, difficult discussion, you light up that smudge and you ask for spirit to enter into that conversation and ask for help from the grandmothers and grandfathers. And just that act alone creates a different feeling with that interaction. And the story I always share there is, you know, working with this mom, we're there with CFS and we are sitting there and telling this mom, the school called us because they're worried about your kids. You know, they're showing up hungry. They're showing up like unbathed, you know, like they're wearing the same clothes day after day. It's wintertime and they don't have mitts and toques. They're very dysregulated in the classroom, probably because they're hungry. And so we're here today because the school's worried about them. And so we're here to talk about that with you. And right away, Mom feels scared, mom feels defensive, mom feels all of these feelings. And in her mind, you know, the little thought bubble above her mind is like, okay, they know we don't have enough money for the food that our kids need, my kids need. They know that I'm struggling financially. They know all these things. What else do they know? Do I tell them the whole story? And if I do, am I going to get in more trouble if I do that, right? The thought bubble above the practitioner's head is, okay, she's telling us this, she's telling us this. What isn't she telling us, and when are we going to find out? And one of the things that we find, and it's not in every situation, but just the act of lighting that smudge creates a place of safety for us to have a conversation, and maybe for mom to take that risk and say, here's all the things that are going on that I'm struggling with. Like, let's start tackling all of them instead of like, when you find out, right? And so we have seen the power of just incorporating that medicine in there. The other thing that we do with our practitioners is we want them to build this like ceremonial muscle. And so how we teach them to do that is in very sort of tricky kind of ways, because ceremony could be so many things. You know, cooking a meal is a ceremony. So we have soup and bannock here twice a month, and our staff prepare a meal for the community. And so it's a lesson in sort of humility and being able to serve people, and putting yourself out there like that. We harvest medicines all through the summer, and we take our staff out to do those, to harvest those medicines, to share those medicines with our community throughout those winter months. We have pipes, we have a culture camp, like we have all of these opportunities for people to be in ceremony here, and we encourage them and give them time and space to be able to do that, so that they feel how it feels to be in ceremony, and they strive to capture that feeling in their interactions with their families and our whoever it is that they're serving here. So so we do that with our practitioners. And then the other thing that we do is when we're talking with families, and we use this beadwork to have discussions with them, to like, instead of being very sort of formal and writing things down on paper on a service plan, we'll have this turtle on a piece of paper, and we'll sort of say, well, who's in this teepee and who's in this teepee? Who are the people around you that we can sort of lean on for support? And really sort of encourage that people to think about you're not alone. And I always say this to our partners in children's services, that you can never tell me that there's no one there for these kids, because there is so many people. They're a First Nations child. They literally have a nation around them. So it's our job to help them identify those people that can be of support to those those parents and those kids that are in there. The other important thing about this, and like I said, we do this over half a day with our folks, but we talk about child welfare, like literally it's in the name. And we often exclude children from those conversations, right? We leave them outside the room while we're talking about these very difficult things. And but they're experiencing it, they're living it, they know what's going on, but we think they're too sensitive to be in the room when we talk about it. And in the Sundance ceremony, kids are everywhere. We don't shield them from the suffering of the sun dancers, because in some tribes, they actually do flesh offerings as well. You know, they pierce, and, you know, that can be potentially traumatizing for a child, but all the children are there. People are watching them, you know, and they're a part of that ceremony. So in our teaching, we want those children in the room. Like, they hold so many people accountable by just being present, right? We can't like avoid the issue when their children are sitting right there. And so they become the center of that conversation and the center of all the ceremony that we're going to move forward with their work. They are the reason that we are there together. So we never want to forget that. When we delivered this teaching to our staff at Bentero, we had a practicum student from the University of Alberta who was doing this community service learning practicum. It's like 16 hours. And I remember thinking, what can we do with her for 16 hours? But on the day she was coming, we just happened to be going out to Blue Quills to receive this teaching for our leadership. And I said, well, come with us. And her name is Tara Capo, and she came out with us She was just finishing up her undergrad. This practicum was a part of that work that she was doing, and she received the teaching. And at the end of the day, she had to do a paper that satisfied her professors at the university. But she came to me and said she was so profoundly impacted by the teaching that she said the paper just didn't feel like enough. It didn't feel like enough to convey how sort of transformative that teaching was for her in the way she sort of looked at her own journey. And so this happened in April, and in September, we were going to deliver that teaching now to our frontline staff in the gym, you know, over 100, probably 150 people in the gym. And we invited her back and said, if you want to come, we'd be happy to have you again. She said, I'd love to, because I actually have something for you guys. And that's when she gifted us with this beadwork, this beautiful beadwork. Her name is Tara Capo. And her gift is beadwork. And she is a traditional woman herself, and really wanted to, you know, be reciprocal in what she received, and convey the impact that it had on her. And so she gifted us with this beautiful beadwork. It's about over a foot long in real life, and it's like probably about 8 or 9 inches wide, and it's absolutely stunning. And it gives us the ability to share this teaching with the staff that we have here at Bentero. Jacqlyn asked me to teach about the lobsticks on her slides. That was another teaching that I've received in my travels about how the rivers were our highways. And on the North Saskatchewan, way long time ago, the lodgepole pines used to be cut by the Indigenous people at the time, and they were like the highway signs, right? They were cut at the top or cut in the middle, and every tree that was cut in a certain way had a certain meaning. You know, it told you that you were on this part of the river. And at every lobstick tree, if you stopped at that area, at the bottom of that tree would be a cache. And the cache would include pemmican, like a previous traveler would have left something for the next traveler to benefit from. If there was something going on in the area, like they would let you know that so that you could avoid potential danger, whatever it was. And so we use that parallel teaching in that practice, in that wellness being toolkit, to convey that we all have a duty to sort of learn and grow. And when we have those teachings, we are to pass them on to the next traveler so that they can incorporate that into their journey, but also add something for the traveler that follows behind them. I went over by 20 minutes, but those are the things that I wanted to share. And I guess we're open, Jackie and I, to questions.
Cheryl, I just wanted to say I was taking a short bit of time because I knew that whatever you had to share had way more meaning than what I had to share. And so and I really appreciate you following up on my lobstick story, because I couldn't do it justice, given that you know, that is something that we learned from you. So I think also, if you have a little bit more to say, unless there are some questions, I'm happy to continue listening.
I went through all the notes I made about all the things I wanted to share. I could go on and on about practice of ceremony, because we deliver it over a half day here with our staff. But one of the things I guess I will add is that we have like many non-Indigenous practitioners here at Bentero, and we want them to think about the work from an Indigenous worldview, because that's who we're serving here. And sometimes there's some reluctance. There's reluctance because there's a fear of doing something wrong or being awkward, like whatever it is that gets in their way. And we really strive to be very gentle teachers for all of our staff, because we can't even assume that our Indigenous staff know this stuff. Like all kinds of people have been through all kinds of journeys, and some people don't grow up with those teachings. They grow up in urban places and didn't have the benefit of many of those teachings. Some of our people grew up in care. And so we're disconnected from culture and all of those things. And so being out on the land, you know, spending time at our culture camp with our traditional knowledge holders and receiving those teachings are really sort of non-threatening ways for everybody to learn how to do those things. And I have a real quick story about our CFS partners who like really didn't see it as like governmenty kind of work. And we really wanted them to practice in this way too. And so we kept like inviting them, and they always found reasons why they couldn't make it to this or that. And so one of our leaders here had a real tricky way of getting them out to ceremony. And what she did was she said, let's do a team building exercise with our child and family service workers. And they said, okay. She says, let's make ribbon skirts. And so she went and got all the material for ribbon skirts. And these CFS workers spent a day creating their own ribbon skirts, and they had a really great time doing it. And guess what happened? When they were done, they were just so proud of their creations that they wanted to wear them in ceremony. And so they were like, okay, now we want to wear them. So where can we wear them? So they were all of a sudden very open to signing up for all of those opportunities that we provide for everybody here. And I just thought she was brilliant for finding a way to get them out on the land and in ceremony. I think questions are starting to roll in. So I heard somebody was moderating that. But we're open to answering any questions people have.
Thank you so much. We've actually got, that was just an absolutely wonderful presentation. I'm so glad that you could be with us today. It's just fascinating. And I'm wondering, Kai, my dear colleague Kai Scott is monitoring the questions. Kai, would you like to take it from here?
Sure. Yeah. So we haven't gotten any in the chat yet. So let's go first to Kelly. Yeah, feel free to unmute, Kelly.
White and Squish Kelly Hansen. I am joining from the traditional unceded territory of the Inclacam and Silk Nations in Merritt, BC. I am a non-Indigenous team lead in a child and family service agency. And I just wanted to ask Cheryl, you mentioned, that you have non-Indigenous staff and some of those Indigenous staff that may not be really immersed in the culture. There could be some resistance or just challenge in them sort of grasping the cultural pieces. And I'm just curious if there's any specific things that you found kind of get through to them, or like kind of break down that barrier, or just like kind of get that light bulb to go off with them. I've been here for 2.5 years, and I know for myself, the application of culture and tradition in practice was more of like, for me in the beginning was very technical, because it was like, okay, this is a thing I have to do, and like building my practice and understanding it was more about like following steps and things like that, which was okay. And it took me until about, I would say this past year, 6 to 8 months, to really connect and click and really feel it on a personal level. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just wondering if there's anything that might support me in supporting my team to get there a little quicker, I guess.
Yeah, I think keeping it simple, like honestly, I talked about how the story I tell is like, and I hope people understand my reference, but Karate Kid, right? He was waxing the floor, he was painting the fence, or waxing the car, painting the fence. He was doing all these things, and he didn't realize he was learning karate, right? And so it was like repetition, and it was a task that you can't naturally, yeah, Jackie. It was a task that you couldn't like attribute to being on a learning journey like that, but it absolutely is related. And so, when you get out on the land and you harvest medicines, that's a ceremony, but it's not a ceremony where you're like, it's not a formal ceremony, like in a pipe ceremony where it's very formal and you're afraid of misstepping. You're afraid of like, do I do something wrong? Like, where do I sit in the circle? How do I sit? Like all that noise in your head takes away from you participating in a meaningful way, right? But when you're out on the land, harvesting sage or sweetgrass or whatever medicine you're out there harvesting, that is a ceremony. And it just feels good to be out on the land, right? And so we took a group of folks out on the land that weren't Indigenous, that were really on this really beginning stages of their learning journey. And one of the things that they shared with our staff was like they felt so emotional and like vulnerable, but not in a bad way, like vulnerable in a good way and like open. And we said, that's because you're in ceremony, you know? And they started to sort of equate this like painting the fence and waxing the car, like all of these things that we were doing were like ceremony. Okay, so when I feel that zen, that openness, that calmness, that regulation, that's ceremony, right? And when you feel those things, you're open to all kinds of possibility, right? And that's what we want when we're in service with people who are trying to be on some kind of healing journey for themselves. We want them to feel like anything is possible, right? And vulnerable in a good way. And so that would be my recommendation. That's certainly the way that we proceed here is, you know, we start every single day with a smudge and a prayer. That starts your day with intention, you know. So when you start your day off with a smudge and a prayer, you're inviting spirit into your ceremony, into your day. And so it makes you approach everything, even challenges, as an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to grow instead of something that's just there to make you mad, make you grumpy, make you whatever, right? And so we challenge, and then we also challenge our families to think in that way. We want them to grow to a place of like, you know, understanding that they have the agency to take care of themselves too. We had a mom who came in here one time and they wanted an elder to bless, she wanted them to bless her home. And I said, oh, like what's happening? And she said, you know, my 5-year-old is having night terrors. And I said to her, oh, and she's like, so I want an elder to come and like bless our home and cleanse it so that my 5-year-old. And I said, so do you know that an elder doesn't have any more special prayers than you know, who grew and birthed this child and brought them into this world? Your prayers are very powerful as well. And you have the ability to cleanse that space and make it a safe space for your child. And we're happy to get you an elder, but we also are happy to provide you with the tools to make that space safe for your child and also to teach your child that they can make their own space safe as well, right? And she's like, well, I didn't know that. Well, okay, can I get some medicine then? And, you know, and I just happened to be in the reception area, like getting something off the photocopier when that happened, right? But that's just like an example of how keeping it simple sometimes, like sometimes we can really overcomplicate things. And we want people to feel relaxed. Ceremony should feel good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that question and that response, Cheryl. Let's go next to Amy.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you, Cheryl and Jacqlyn, for this presentation. It's been so beautiful. Cheryl, my question was around the practice as ceremony. So I came across this concept in the Mio Opikanawaswin book. It was one of the books I had to read. I'm a student at Blue Quills, and this concept I have just fallen completely in love with, and I try to bring it. I work for CFS in the North Region on an Indigenous and Practice Supports unit, and I'm trying to inspire leadership with this concept the way I've been inspired because it's just such a beautiful way to show up in the world. But I was wondering, with your half-day training or the information, like you just do it so beautifully. I was just wondering, like, do you do this for other organizations? Is there a way we could bring you in the North and just light everyone's hearts? That would be
Absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So before I'm done, I'll pop my email in the chat, and I'll connect you with people who can do that. The other thing I would say, and it might be too late for this year, but it might not, but every June we have a 4-day culture camp here at Bentero, and that was actually born, that's where we sort of launched practice as ceremony to the community. And our commitment is to share that teaching like as far and as wide as we can. And the camp gives us that ability to sort of share teachings with community. It's free. It's from the 18th to the 20th this year. So yeah, like if you guys can swing yourselves down here, you know, it's a really cool, wonderful way to spend the day sitting in a teepee, listening to our elders share their knowledge. But also we can definitely hit the road and come up and see you guys.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. That certainly makes me want to hit the road as well too. That's awesome. I just wanted to, oh, sorry, Michelle, did you want to get a
Yes.
question as well?
Yes, I would. I would just like to mention that I hope you can join us on May 21st from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. for our jurisdiction journey critical decision points. My First Nation, Cowessess, we were the first to get jurisdiction over child and family services for our members, including those on and off reserve. The jurisdiction is exercised through the Mio Padavell Act. Sorry about that. And and a coordination agreement with the province of Saskatchewan. The act and the agreement ensure that the nation has the authority to make decisions about child and family services within their community, which is in my community. And Nicole Cook, interim CEO of the Cowessess First Nations Chief Red Bear Children's Lodge, will present the Jurisdiction Journey Critical Decision Points webinar. This is really going to be quite an amazing thing. So I just wanted to mention that while I had a moment. Thank you, Kai.
Thank you, Michelle. So I thought I'd just read, June 18th to 20th in response, Kimberly, to the dates for the culture camp. Thank you, Cheryl. And Cheryl has put her email address as well into the chat, so you can follow up and see if you can get them to hit the road for you. And then I just wanted to read a couple of the comments that came in. From Dawn, thank you, Jacqlyn and Cheryl. This has been very meaningful and such a great reminder of how to serve our children, youth, and families. And not to forget, sometimes we need the additional supports as well. Chimiguech, Cheryl, and Jacqlyn. Thanks, Cheryl and Jackie. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and story. It's so beautiful and inspiring for our children, youth, families, and communities. As I always say, this work is important and it's heart work. And I didn't know that was from Deb, but as soon as I read heart work, I thought, oh, that's our Deb Foxcroft. So I just want to acknowledge you as well, Deb, for all of the teachings as well, our dear elder.
Yeah, it can be very easy to sort of give up on working in this way because we have been so conditioned and taught to work in a different way. And when you're conditioned and taught to work in that way, you naturally want to sort of revert back to that. And that's like change is really, really difficult. And so, you know, incorporating ceremony into our practice here was a really difficult thing to do. And it was a really brave thing for our practitioners to be able to do in relationship to the work that they were doing with their families. And so the act of lighting the smudge was a very powerful thing to do, but also a very scary thing to do for many of our practitioners. And also working with our partners in children's services, it was so beyond anything that they'd ever been used to experiencing or having a part of their interactions with families. And there was this resistance from our CFS partners in practicing in that way in those early days for sure. Still a little bit today in pockets. But I remember having one of our practitioners come into my office and, you know, really sort of making herself vulnerable and saying, you know, I'm trying to do this. Like I believe in it and I'm really, really trying to do this. And I lit my smudge in this meeting with this mom and our CFS partner. And our CFS partner rolled her eyes when I pulled out the smudge. And it was very hurtful to me, she said. To see my partner in CFS like, oh, you know, like, and I think they didn't do it to be mean. They did it because it just like, why are we doing it? They had no understanding of why. they were doing it. And but our worker said like it was very hurtful. And if it hurt me, I can't imagine how mom must have felt, you know, having that happen. And so she said, so do you have any guidance for me? And I said, yeah, light it anyway. I said, the medicine doesn't care if you believe in it because the medicine has a job to do and it will do its job. I said, think of your antibiotics whenever you have to take them. They don't care if you believe in them. They do their job because that's what they know their job is. And so I said, so light that medicine anyway. And like, just, it's going to take a really brave act to do it. When you know that everyone in the room isn't really digging it, but light it anyway, and it will do its job. And so we've seen practice change, you know, over the years that we've been doing work in this way. We always did it with our families, but it's incorporating it with our partners outside of Bentero. That was the struggle.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. What a beautiful and uplifting way to end our session this morning. Though I will do one last call if there are any other questions while we do have our wonderful guests here. All right, so I'll turn it back over to you, Michelle.
Thank you so much. That was just the most fabulous presentation. I'm so grateful. We did it all, I have to say, in a couple of days. So we're really just so blown out. Thank you so much, Cheryl, and thank you so much, Jacqlyn. Yeah, we're so grateful to have you. Just to let you know that the webinar as well as the recording will be available via our website very shortly. And once again, we have the May 21st webinar that I mentioned, Jurisdiction Journey, Critical Decision Points, that will be happening. So please go to our website, look up webinars under resources. You'll get the link or send me an email because I've got the link in my responses. Also, I'd like to mention that on May 27th, from 10 a.m. again, Pacific time, we have the First Nations Children and Family Caring Society webinar. It's called Know Your Rights Under Jordan's Principle. Stephanie Wellman from the Caring Society, she works closely with Dr. Cindy Blackstock, and she's hosting a webinar with special guests, and they're going to outline rights under Jordan's Principle, options available to families whose rights are not being respected under Jordan's Principle, and how we can all hold Canada accountable. Attendees will be able to ask questions using the Q&A function on Zoom, which is, it's going to be a really good webinar, that one. And also a quick mention about the 2025 conferences that we'll be holding, September 8th to 11th, Loving Justice, Supporting Each Other National Conference. It will be held at Prairieland Park in Saskatoon, and the call for presentations is open. So if you are an agency or an individual, I'm looking at you, Cheryl and Jacqlyn. It would be great if you could present at that conference. That's going to be good. And I'd also like to say, we'd also love to have you and anyone else who would be interested at the Our Children, Our Way, a national forum for Indigenous child and family well-being. That's from November 2nd to 5th. It's our 4th annual conference. And it's usually oversubscribed. So I think we'll be expecting again about 1,250 to 2,000 people, some far away, some from Africa. We have some inquiries there. And of course, Australia and New Zealand. That'll be held at the Vancouver Convention Center. And yeah, and I'd also just like to very much thank Cheryl and Jacqlyn once again, and my dear colleagues, Tracy Melchuk, Kai Scott, our beautiful elder, Deb Foxcroft, OBC, Judy Wilson, our beautiful and esteemed knowledge keeper and advisor, and Ashley Birdstone for initiating this wonderful webinar. So I say to each and every one of you, Haichka OCM, all my relations, and I say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Michelle, and all your team. It was a great opportunity. Have a good weekend.